So I trust that you can see my screen. Thank you everybody for joining. This is, we are going to be covering the 2021 Ironman 70.3 World Championship. This is our course and really our race overview, which takes place on September 18th. Today is not September 18th. Okay, so first off, right off the bat, we are going to be touching upon the QT2 5 training cornerstones, which are training, nutrition and rest, event fueling, pacing, and mental aspects to racing and training. So those are all of the things that go into a race, and we're going to touch upon a little bit of each of those. In the first part of this presentation, we're going to be talking a little more along the lines of race logistics and that kind of stuff. But once we get, then about midway through, we will really be hitting more of the training and nutrition and fueling and pacing and stuff. Okay. So in the 3 weeks before, again, this is race logistics. So first of all, congratulations to everybody who qualified for the race. You know, this is a world championship event. It is a big event, and it's in a beautiful venue, on a very, very challenging course. Gone are the days of the 70.3 World Championship being raced in Clearwater on pancake blazing fast courses. Now this is a very fair and very challenging course. If you'll bear with me one moment, I'm just going to make sure that I haven't lost anybody. I want to make sure people are able to get in. So I will do that now, and I'm not going to do that anymore. Okay, so in the 3 weeks before the race, we highly recommend a bit of a dress rehearsal. So maybe pick a weekend where you, a weekend day, say maybe a Saturday, where you kind of run yourself through what I would consider to be a microcosm of the event. You know, your event is you know, a 1.2 mile swim, 56 mile bike, 13.1 mile run. You don't want to do that in the next 3 weeks, but you may want to do something that involves a solid bike with a solid transition run coming off of it, where you are building throughout QT2 zone 1 into the top of zone and through zone 2 to the top of zone 2 on the bike, and doing a similar-ish type thing on the run. So what I would maybe recommend, and this is not for everybody, it's very athlete dependent, very volume dependent, is a Saturday where you maybe do a 40 mile bike ride, where the first 30 miles of it are building through zone 1 and the final 10 miles of it are building through zone 2, finishing at the top of zone 2, followed by say a 6 or say a 6.5 mile run, where you
hey,
oh, hold on, I'm just gonna have to
that was,
you go.
he didn't see that.
Sorry about that. That's always the best. Okay, so I'm sorry, what I was saying was a 40 mile bike ride with about 30 miles building through zone 1, 10 miles building through zone 2, and then say a 6.5 mile run with, you know, 4.5 miles at zone 1 and 2 miles at zone 2. So just some kind of microcosm of the event, just to where you're practicing your fueling, and maybe you get up that morning and 3 hours before your event and practice your race day nutrition, include your pre-race breakfast, which I'll speak to a little bit more of, and you do a full equipment check, okay, with all of your race gear and that kind of stuff. So it's a good thing to consider. After that, maybe bring your bike to your local shop and get a tune-up. I would do that on the sooner side rather than later. I am a proponent of being able to manage the problems or knowing the problems that I have, and just learning how to manage with them in a race. So if I have a bike problem where I have a little bit of a shifter issue, or it doesn't always behave perfectly. If I know how to manage it and I know what those things are, I know how to behave around those things, as opposed to getting a tune-up the day before a big race or 2 days before, and not having an opportunity to ride the bike, excuse me, and then having issues about the bike that I'm not aware of. So if you can get a tune-up on the sooner side, like now, that would be great. And in the next 3 weeks, try to simulate the race conditions as best you can. I think the weather that you will be having typically in most parts of the country are not going to be significantly different than what you will see in St. George for the most part. There aren't big drastic differences right now. And then kind of start packing. This is not something I would do personally, but for those of you who may be well organized, you can start to put things together, start creating race week piles of things that you know you're going to need for the race. And then also, just now's also a really good time to be on the lookout. BOLO, okay, be on the lookout for emails from active.com. So actively be checking your inbox and your junk folder for emails from Active, because they are going to be asking you to select your athlete check-in times, your bike and gear check-in times. You're going to need a QR code in order to go to registration. This is not the QR code, but this is the kind of thing that you're going to need to have with you in order to access registration at race site. And now they're going to start to be sending that stuff. So be on the lookout for that stuff. You don't want to have to be looking for your QR code as you are walking through the parking lot over to registration. Okay, now is a good time to figure that stuff out. So athlete check-in, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, all day Wednesday and Thursday, and the morning of Friday. Bike and bag check-in are all day Friday, and they're gonna, and run bag check-in is the same, at a different venue, different place, but all day Friday. And they are going to ask you to make appointments to attend each of these things. I haven't experienced so far, at least in my experiences, that they are tremendously strict with the times of the appointments that you make. What they are really trying to do is obviously space people out, but they're not necessarily, if you choose the 1 to 2 time frame and you show up at 2:05, you have not missed your opportunity to race in the race. Typically, they're just trying to create a natural distance between people. Okay. Also, 3 weeks before, start to take a look at the weather. Start to make sure that you are training in, along with the weather conditions that you're going to have. What I went back and I looked at some historical stuff with St. George. I think that, in my opinion, it gets a little bit of a bad rap as being overly hot. It is a hot place, but in the times when the race is going to be taking place, from what I've seen on the hourlies, is that the conditions are relatively tame. So a typical temperature range around 6 a.m. is approximately 70 degrees. It builds up to, by noon, 80 to 82 degrees. It is extremely dry in that area. So not a lot of humidity at all. And so even 80 degrees doesn't feel that bad if you are coming from an area of humidity. Afternoon, after 12 p.m., the temperatures definitely skyrocket. So you'll go from low to mid 80s up to towards 100. And that happens pretty quickly. So, but for most athletes, you're going to be racing kind of in that 6 a.m. to noon timeframe. The conditions aren't drastically different than probably what most people have been training in all summer long. Okay. Having said that, keep in mind, just be aware of the need for heat acclimation. And if you are training in typical summer conditions, then maybe it's just happening naturally. But you do want to make sure that at least one session each day, you are just making sure that you are in conditions that kind of range between, you know, I would say that you're in conditions that are in the mid 70s to low 80s, be it on the bike or the run, typically. Okay. And if that means if you're somebody who gets up really early to ride outside or to run outside, then you may need to overdress a little bit. Maybe wear a long sleeve jersey or something along those lines. If that is if you tend to train early morning and the conditions are a little cooler, but you do want to have at least one session each day where you are kind of focused on the heat acclimation. And what the goal is to try and create the same kind of sweat rate that you're going to experience on race day, such that you end up being that you need to take in the fuel, typically the drink, the sports drink, at the rate of, for the typical athlete, somewhere between 1 and 2 bottles per hour. And you want to create a dynamic where you are needing to do that, and therefore building up your tolerance to be able to do so. On race day, you're going to want to put yourself in a position through fluid intake to have to pee at least once on the bike during the bike ride. Okay, so this is the time to start to kind of look towards that and make sure you're really practicing towards that. Okay, and I'm just going to take one moment, and I feel like some people were trying to enter, and I just don't want to. Okay, we have one, and I'm going to mute all again. Not going to fall for that trick again. All right, going back. So race week. Get yourself a straw hat and sit in a hammock. No, just make sure you stay at your feet, stay hydrated. Make sure that you are hydrating with things more than water. Water is excellent, but it shouldn't be the only thing that you're hydrating with. Make sure you're using sports drink. You can use a little bit of Noon, a little bit of the quote unquote zeros to hydrate, but you really don't want to use too much of that stuff, because those fake flavors, those fake sugars, they come at a price, typically in the form of gastric distress. So you probably want to limit how much of the Noons and the zeros that you have. Drink water, drink sports drink, make sure you're getting your electrolytes down. You know, maybe have a little bit of a magnesium supplement during the week, because if you're drinking a lot of water, drinking a lot of sports drink, which will hopefully have potassium and sodium in it, it may not have the magnesium, and all that fluid may be flushing out magnesium from your body. So you may want to have a little concentration towards some magnesium race week, because your hydration in other areas has increased so much, you may be flushing other electrolytes out. So just be careful of that. If you have any kind of just odd cramping that occurs seemingly out of nowhere, oftentimes that can be you're missing out on some magnesium. Okay, you know, just minimize stress. You know, no big deal. And sleep and more sleep all week as much as you can. I would recommend eating pretty normally. Race week, the race is on a Saturday, so there are 2 exceptions to the eating normally. Actually 3 exceptions, I apologize. So on Monday, I would recommend a fat loading meal. Fat loading meal is it's not a license to go out and eat an ice cream sundae and a pizza, but it is a meal that is high in nutrient density, that focuses more on that has a good bit of fat in it, healthy fats. Okay, what am I talking about? What is an example of that? An example of that might be, you know, go to Be Good if you have that in your area. Get yourself a turkey burger with guacamole and cheese. Get the roll. Get yourself some sweet potato fries. That is a good fat loading meal. Okay, and studies have shown that a fat load about 5 or 6 days prior to a carbo load, which will take place on Friday, helps the body to absorb the carbohydrates 5 days later. Okay, that's the logic behind that. It's not a reason to go get ice cream and eat Funyuns and all that, but try to keep it as nutrient dense as possible. The other exception to eating normally is the Friday big breakfast. So the day before the big carbo load, you want to have a very large breakfast where you leave the breakfast arena feeling sick and stuffed. We are in the process of trying to identify a restaurant in the area where we can host a QT2 breakfast. We're working on it. Not there yet, but we are working on it. But the big breakfast is a big stack of pancakes, hash browns, limit the bacon, limit the, maybe a little bit of egg. Okay, so high in carbohydrate, a little bit of protein, limit the fat. Okay, plenty of maple syrup. You want to leave the restaurant feeling absolutely stuffed, and then taper throughout the rest of the day with snacking on carbohydrates and foods that have sodium. So like pretzels are a good idea, and kind of taper that throughout the rest of the day, such that you go to bed with having eaten a small, maybe a cup of pasta with a little bit of chicken breast. Okay, and if you do it right, you should maybe go to bed feeling slightly hungry, not starving, but just slightly hungry. That's okay though, because you're going to wake up on Saturday morning and you're going to have a good sized pre-race breakfast. Okay. And then during race week, just make sure you do the things that sometimes you forget to do. So for example, replace and charge your batteries. Yes, believe it or not, if people who have electronic shifting, you got to charge that stuff. And the problem with the technology is that it is so good that the battery life lasts so long that you kind of forget that you need to charge that, right? So you can oftentimes on a Di2 Shimano Di2 bike get 600 to 800 miles of riding out of a single charge on the battery. Well, that's, for a lot of us, that could be a month apart between charges. You forget. Okay, race week is a good time to just plug that stuff in. Plug your power meter in, your Garmin's. Make sure those are fully charged. Okay. All right, days before the check-in. So the check-in occurs down pretty much where T2 is, Town Square Park. A nice little park right in the middle of town. You're going to need your QR code, like I talked about before, photo ID, and your USAT card. Athletes only. So leave the family and friends and pets elsewhere. So just you. And when you register, you're going to get your race bib, which you'll wear on the run, only on the run, helmet and bike stickers, swim cap, your race wristband, your race numbers, the tattoos they have now, and then the race bags. Also your timing chip. Don't lose that. In the old days when I was racing, as soon as I got my timing chip, I put it on. And if I registered on Wednesday and the race were on Saturday, I wore that timing chip all day Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and obviously all day Saturday. So, but just make sure you don't lose that. Maybe put it in with the swim cap that they give you, so that you can't possibly put your swim cap on without putting a timing chip on. Okay. Okay, and then this is just kind of a map of the things that are going on. I'll try to use my cursor as best I can. This is where Ironman Villages, the transition. Okay, this is that Town Square Park. And then these are important checkpoints or important areas throughout the town. As you can see, this is T1 in the swim. It is a bit out of town. This race is not logistically simple. Okay, it's not a nightmare, but it's not logistically simple. You are going to have to drive out to T1 in order to drop off your bike, the day before, and then you're going to take a shuttle down there race morning, and you're going to have to go back downtown, drop off your stuff for T2, your run stuff. So it's not a logistically simple race, but like I said, it's not a nightmare. They also do a really good job. The primary thing I wanted to point out about this is not on this particular slide, so I will come back to that. So there's going to be an endurance fun run. on Thursday morning, 8:30. That takes place at T2. The welcome banquet is at the Dixie Convention Center down here. Mandatory race briefing at the Dixie Convention Center, and then your bike and bike bag check-in at T1, right? And then your run bag check-in at T2. Okay. And then bike support Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday all day. And that bike tech support will be at this primary park. Okay. And official swim access on the course will be Wednesday and Thursday in the morning. And they say that you can swim from the beaches anytime, but I wouldn't necessarily trust that. If you really need to get swims in, I would go during the allotted hours, because you may not, they may have reason to limit access to the water for safety reasons. Okay, so you're gonna schedule a time to drop off your bike and bike bag. Okay, like I said, they're not gonna hold you to that time. If you schedule 1 to 2 p.m. and you show up at 2:15, you're still gonna get your bike in. They're just trying to spread you out. And you can put your bike shoes in your checked bag or on your bike. Okay, so bike and bike bag at T1, run bag will be also all day Friday, and that is downtown at T2. So the shuttle situation. This was the slide that I wanted to point out. So they have a nice shuttle situation going on all week, and including race morning. But the thing that I wanted to point out was that the shuttle is available. It will bring you from each of these areas to a central location, okay? And only from that central location will the shuttle bring you to T1 or to the swim stack, okay? So, and that's for timing purposes. I just want everyone to be prepared. So only from the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, okay? So spot number 5. This is the only place where they will be bringing you from down to T1. So I would time that appropriately, such that if you're going to park your car, say at the Dixie Convention Center, okay, you're not going to hop on a shuttle that's then going to bring you to T1. You're going to hop on a shuttle that's going to bring you downtown, okay? Then you're going to get on a different shuttle and go over to T1, okay? So just be aware of that. Be advised for timing purposes, okay? All right, like I said, big breakfast the day before. Make sure you taper out your eating throughout the day. Make sure you hydrate. The increased load of carbohydrates all day. If the better you hydrate, the more well those are going to be absorbed. Okay, so make sure you are hydrating. And like I said, with things that are not just water. Water is good, but it shouldn't be the only thing you drink. Limit your zeros, limit your noons, okay? This is a day that's okay to have sugar, okay? Because you're going to use it the next day. The day before, I would make sure you kind of set out all of your race gear, like take over a portion of the room or wherever you are and just set everything out so that you can pack your bags. Make sure you get your tri-kit, your swim cap, your goggles, all that stuff that you're gonna need to put in those bags or have prepared for the next day. Just spread it out and make sure you have it all. Try to have an early-ish dinner. So somewhere probably around like 5:30 or 6:30. That would be a good time to have a like I said, a cup of pasta with a little bit of chicken breast, so a little bit of carbohydrate, a little bit of protein, and then early to bedtime, and make sure you set your alarm. Okay, race morning. Race morning, you have your pre-race breakfast. Typically speaking, in QT2 world, we have our applesauce protocol. That is a breakfast that is low in fiber, low in fat, and not too much protein. So we have just an obnoxious amount of applesauce with a little bit of a protein shake, a whey protein shake. Studies show that Whey protein consumed the morning of an event can tend to help aid in performance. So we have our applesauce, a little bit of whey protein, maybe a bottle of sports drink to help with hydration. And we try to do that approximately 3 hours prior to race start. Now, I recommend that you practice this breakfast, like we said, in the first slide, it was kind of like, let's do a run through, a race run through, you know, where we do that 40-mile ride and the 6.5 mile run, which I just kind of made up off the spot, but just like a microcosm of the event. I recommend doing the pre-race breakfast on that day. Hopefully, I also recommend about doing that about 3 hours before you start the workouts. Otherwise, the workouts will be, if you do it earlier than that, later than that, closer to the workouts will be rough. And the reason why I say that is because you want to understand how you are going to feel after consuming that much applesauce, okay? Consuming that much applesauce. So for example, and everybody's different, it depends on your body size. I, at 5'11", 165 pounds, would need about 3 cups of applesauce. And like I said, that's an obnoxious amount of applesauce. It leaves you feeling just horrible immediately after finishing it. But if you give yourself the time, and that's why we do this about 3 hours before, it hydrates you tremendously, which will be proven because you will not be able to not pee. But also it kind of flushes you out in the other direction as well. And so if you do that about 3 hours prior to the start, you're going to go to the starting line pretty much fully evacuated. And that's a great place to be, okay? But you want to practice that because you want to have that feeling before you experience it for the first time on race day, okay? Like I said, the shuttles to Ironman Village, and then the shuttles from Ironman Village to the Sand Hollow. So just make sure you understand that there is only one location that is shuttling you down to the race start, and that is from that Church of Latter-day Saints. All other shuttles are going to bring you to that shuttle. Okay, so don't get on a shuttle at the Dixie Convention Center thinking you're going to land at T1. You will not. So to IM Village, those shuttles will run between 3:15 and 7 a.m. To Sand Hollow, which is the race start, 4 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. There will be no parking available at the swim start on race morning, so don't even bother. Okay. T1 opens at 5 a.m. Just make sure you allow yourself a little bit of extra time. There's going to be a lot of energy. There's going to be a lot of stress. Just take time out of the stress equation for yourself, okay? Give yourself plenty of time. Better to get down to T1 and maybe be a little bit bored than to be stressed out on a shuttle, afraid that you're going to miss the opportunity to go check on your bike before you have to get in the water, okay? Drop off your morning clothes bag at T1 prior to heading to the swim start, and they are saying that you will be able to have a swim warm up, which is good. Okay, race day cutoff times for those to whom this applies. You will have 1 hour and 10 minutes to complete the 1900 meter swim. You have 5.5 hours to complete the swim, T1, and bike. So basically 5.5 hours to get off the bike, and then 8.5 hours to cross the finish line. Okay. All right. So the swim is pretty self-explanatory. Just this big pizza wedge. In other races that I've done at St. George, you used to go start further, say south on this picture, and go around that island and finish where they're finishing you. But right now, it's going to be on this pizza wedge. It's a very straightforward, very nice. The professional men, a beautiful body of water, can be a little choppy if it's windy. That area it can have wind, and if it's windy, that water can be very choppy. So just be advised. But the professional men will start at 7 a.m. The professional women at 7:10, and then the age groupers will start at 7:25 with a self-seated rolling start. Okay, and it looks like they're going to be doing 10 athletes every 15 seconds, which is actually like little mini waves of athletes starting, which is I think that's a pretty cool way to do it. Should be relatively low stress. You'll have plenty of people to swim around, but not too many. And so I actually like that change that they've made. If the water is choppy, like I said, what I would recommend is this is just kind of a technique approach. If the water is choppy, I recommend that you increase your swim turnover, increase your swim cadence, such that you are hitting the chop rather than the chop hitting you. Okay. I think of it as like an NFL running back. An NFL running back is well served to hit the guy who's going to tackle him rather than getting hit by the guy, or getting hit by the guy who's going to tackle him. I put the emphasis in the wrong spot. Okay, so hit the water rather than the water hitting you, and you will tend to handle the chop better. To do that probably involves just increasing your turnover a bit. Okay. The water temperature will be announced during the race briefings. I find this very difficult to believe, but they're saying it's currently in the low 80s, with wetsuits permitted up to and including 76.1 degrees. I tend to be just completely wrong on water temp anyway. But the times that I've swum in this reservoir, it's been 57 degrees. But if they're saying it's in the low 80s, then it's in the low 80s. But I would just prepare yourself for the possibility that this event may very well not be wetsuit legal, and therefore you may want to strategize around what you may wear, be it a swimsuit, or get yourself one of those swim skins so that you can wear your race kit in the water. Obviously, draft as you are able. The way that the race is going to start with 10 athletes going every 15 seconds, drafting will be, I think it's an excellent drafting situation, because there's plenty of people to swim with and amongst, in theory, because it's a self-seated rolling start. You're swimming with like-minded people, people of your approximate speed. So there's plenty of people to swim with, but not too many to get too stressed over. Okay, and just be aware that the turns will be crowded. So and maybe stay wide, maybe not. But as you're approaching the turns, start to think about the turns. So maybe in the 100 meters, when you start to see those big red buoys off in the distance, maybe start to think about, what am I going to have to do around this turn? Is the swimming line starting to get a little more dense with bodies? Should I start to come out wide a bit to get around the turn? And just remember, you do not have to go around. Let me rephrase that. That wasn't going to come out very well. You only have to go around the turn buoys. Okay, so the big red buoys at the far end of the swim course, those are the buoys you have to go around. You are allowed to swim on the inside of the sighting buoys. So the orange and yellow, you can tend to swim on the inside of. The red ones, you must go around. The bike course. So the first thing I want to point out about this bike course is the elevation profile. I mean, this just does not do this bike course justice at all. This is a hilly course. It's not murderous, but it is. I would consider it to be at 61 feet per mile. It is very Placidish. Okay, very Lake Placidish. So 3,400 feet over the course of 56 miles. The first 40 miles with rolling terrain, quote unquote rolling terrain. You're going to leave T1. You're going to descend for the most part, descend out of the reservoir. You're going to bang a left onto the main road, and you're just going to start grinding for quite a while. Some good hills out there, just good hills, and nothing that you have to be too concerned with, but it's not I would consider this profile right here, the first 45 miles of this profile, to be borderline false advertising. Okay. There are some fast and flat sections on the course, particularly when you're in town. But when you are approaching town or on the far outskirts of town, that simply ain't so. So you're gonna have to kind of climb from the reservoir to town, and it's pretty fair into town. You go into this area, this famous area called Snow Canyon. It's actually really quite nice in there, but it can be extremely windy, like just tremendously windy in there. So just be advised on that. Again, if you are riding, if you have a set wattage goal, just call it 200 watts, and you're riding with a tailwind, then maybe that's a good time to kind of jack up your wattage for a bit. Maybe go to 215 and drop your cadence, throw it into a little bit of a grind. That's with a tailwind. With a headwind, I kind of espouse the theory of don't fight Mother Nature. She wins every single time. So maybe drop the wattage down a bit, maybe 185 to 195, and increase the cadence. Just make, and the reason for increasing the cadence is because you are probably naturally riding into a headwind, going to drop your cadence unconsciously. And so it's a good idea to just kind of go a little bit above and beyond and increase the cadence, kind of feel like you're spinning a little more. So that's what the kind of stuff that I would do with the wind, particularly in that Snow Canyon area. Then Snow Canyon has a significant climb. It's about 4 miles long. It's just one of those climbs that you're climbing, and that's what you're doing for the next 4 miles or so. And it's not unclear that you're climbing. It's just very obvious that you're climbing. But at the top of that, once you peak out at the top of that climb, you have essentially a 9-mile descent into town. And it's the most challenging thing about this particular descent is staying on the bike, because often the distance on the views, the views are unbelievable on this descent. So just make sure you pay attention to the road in front of you. But one thing that I theorize is that this course, this 56-mile course, kind of rides a little bit like a 47-mile course, okay? Because you do have a significant descent into town. So you can actually maybe aim to hold a wattage in this race that is 3 to 5% greater than what you would typically ride for a 70.3, because you're gonna have a rest. You're gonna ride 47 miles and then rest on your bike for about 7 miles. So if, for example, if your goal wattage is around 220 watts, then this is the kind of course where maybe you ride 225 to 230. Okay. On the bike course, at the aid stations will be about every 12 to 15 miles. They will have orange flavored Gatorade Endurance, water, bananas, these Morton gels, I'll speak to those a little bit, quantum energy bars, I'll speak to those a little bit, and Fig Newtons. Penalties on the bike course, just don't get one, but if you do, so drafting is not allowed. That's cheating. You get a blue card. That's a 5-minute penalty. With drafting, as an age grouper in the age group race, you must keep 6 bike lengths between the front wheel of your bike and the rear wheel of the bike in front of you. Make sure that you are passing on the left. So if you break into that 6 bike length zone, okay, you cannot break out of it without going through it. Okay, so you can't break into the 6 bike length zone and then back off. No, you have to pass all the way through it. And you have 25 seconds to do so. Okay, so 3 violations will result in a red card, which is disqualification, which probably won't happen in the course of 56 miles. That's just not a lot of, that's not enough time to get 3 penalties. If you get 3 penalties in 56 miles, you deserve to get kicked out of the race. Okay, but the number one thing I think you have to be careful of with disqualifications is if you do get a penalty, make absolutely certain that you stop at the very next penalty tent that you see. Okay, you don't get your choice of penalty tents if you get a penalty. You have to go to the very next penalty tent. Okay, so if you get a penalty, no matter what the penalty, go to the very next penalty tent, okay? Blocking violation, that is when you are, essentially you are not riding to the right of the road, on the right of the road, and you are blocking someone else from being able to go to it, to pass you. That's a yellow card. It's a 30-second penalty. If you get one, you have to go to the very next tent you see. If you do not go to the very next tent you see, no matter what the penalty is, you will be disqualified. Okay. And then probably the one of the penalties you have to be most careful of is the littering violation. And there's two forms of littering. One is unintentional littering. You're riding down the road and that gel packet that was in your back pocket that was poorly placed in your back pocket slips out unbeknownst to you. That's going to land you a penalty if they see you. Okay, not a relatively minor penalty, but a penalty. But the other form of littering is I guess I would just call it with malice. But you'll be disqualified. So that is if you eat a gel, if you're riding and you are not within sight of an aid station, or you are outside of the zone. I shouldn't say within sight. I take that back. If you are not within the zone of an aid station and you eat a gel and you just throw it on the ground, okay, you are going to get disqualified. Okay. All right, run course, extremely hilly. Okay, 1,293 feet of gain over 13.1 miles. That's 98 feet per mile. That is no joke. Okay, it is a 2-loop run course. It is a different kind of run course than when I have raced at St. George. In the past, when I've raced at St. George, we have left transition in this area, run a grind. So the beginning portion of the race is just a grind, all uphill. And then it kind of gets rolling through here. And we would do some kind of stuff out here and then finish down here. Now what they're doing is it's basically 2 loops. So grind all the way up, and then descend down back into town, do it again. Okay. And you'll just see that it's just a hilly course. When you were climbing, you climb for 4 miles. Okay. And you don't they're not steep climbs. They're not horrible climbs. They're just the kind of climbs that affect your pace to the tune of 20 to 30 seconds per mile, 15 to 30 seconds per mile, depending upon what kind of runner you are. They're not the kind of climbs that affect your pace by 90 seconds per mile or 2 minutes per mile. Okay, they're grinders. So just pacing, know that. Okay, you are in the first 4 miles of the race. In the first 4 miles of each loop, you should be going slower than you would normally be running in a typical 70.3. Okay, because you are going uphill. It is that those first 4 miles are just slower. They're not horribly slower, but they are slower. Like I said, 15 to 30 seconds per mile effect on your pace. Okay. Very little shade you're in the desert. So if there is shade, it's on this drop up from this Red Hills Parkway down into town, if there is shade. But typically speaking, you're not going to see a lot of trees in St. George, Utah. It is 2, of course, and then don't forget your bib number. You do not need to ride. This is the kind of rule that kind of it bounces around. In Europe, you typically have to have your bike number on you. I'm sorry, you have to have your bib number on you when you're on the bike. In the US, you don't. In this event, you just have to have your bib number on for the run. Okay. But make sure you do have it on for the run. That's a DQable offense. Run course aid stations, they'll have the Gatorade Endurance, lemon lime flavor. They're going to be approximately every mile. You have your Red Bull, your cola, your water, avoid it. Pretzels, chips, bananas, these gels, like I said, and ice figurines. Okay, the transitions. One transitions at the swim start down at that Sand Hollow Park. And then transition 2 is at downtown. I highly recommend that you, as you are finishing the swim, that you start, say in the final 200 meters, 300 meters of the swim, just start to think about what your transition is going to look like. You're gonna run through, exit the swim, you're gonna grab your T1 bag and just imagine, just play it out in your head. What you're gonna do first. I'm gonna put my shoes on first, I'm gonna put my helmet on. Okay, just play it out in those final 200 to 300 meters of the swim. And then do the same on as you're finishing the bike. You're gonna have 7 miles of fast descending to just think about that. Okay. There's not gonna be a lot of stress in your world. So you can think about what your T2 is gonna look like. Again, you'll grab your bag and change things up. Okay, no changing tents. Transitions are an excellent time to get some nutrition down. Don't rush through nutrition. Don't rush through nutrition. Don't rush through transition, but do it with purpose. Okay, make haste, but I like to say get it right the first time. Okay, so don't rush getting your running shoe on in T2 such that you end up folding over the insole of your shoe, such that you either have to run with that folded insole for 13 miles, which will be tremendously annoying, or you have to take the shoe off, take the insole out, uncrease it, put it back in, put the shoe back on, get it right the first time. Go slow but quick. Okay, stay relaxed. All right. So I just some quick things about this on-course nutrition. These Morton gels, I don't like them. They're crap. So the reason why I guess maybe that's a little overstated. I wish I could turn that back. I wouldn't say that quite to that extent. But the reason why I have an issue with a Morton gel is that they have almost no sodium in them. So 34 milligrams of sodium per Morton gel. The gold standard on gels, which typically come in the form of the Gatorade endurance gels and the Power Bar gels, 200 milligrams of sodium. Every time you take a gel, you want to make sure that you are getting at least 200 milligrams of sodium in you. And these Morton gels just come up extremely short in that area. I personally do like the texture of the Morton gels. They're a different kind of texture. They're I don't even know what, almost pasty. I don't know if that's what would I call that? Yeah, almost pasty, I guess is almost what I would call that. I like the texture. The flavors are fine, but they just don't have the sodium in them at all. The other thing I don't like, the gels that come in the black packaging have no caffeine. The gels that come in the white packaging have 100 milligrams of caffeine. That's the other thing I don't like about the Morton gels, is that they're big hits of caffeine. And I wish that they had toned down caffeine in their gels. It's just, 100 milligrams is fine. You take a second gel, you have 200 milligrams. You take a third gel, you're starting to dance with the devil a little bit, but you probably handle it. Now all of a sudden, a fourth gel, and you might start to develop some stomach issues because you're just taking in so much caffeine all at once. So just be careful with that. These quantum energy bars, they're not the best, say, race fueling bar. And the reason why I say that is they just have a lot of fat. So you see in the highlight, 11 grams of fat in an energy bar. That's just, you don't want fat. That's just gonna slow the absorption of the carbohydrates that you're aiming for. And then pretty high protein as well. Not obscene protein wise. It's not so different than the old school power bars in the protein department, but the fat is just significantly higher. And then the other thing is the caffeine content in these quantum energy squares. It's a good hit of caffeine. Whatever they're using as a caffeine source is legit. So you just want to be careful with those. I would stay away from the Morton gels and the quantum bars for the most part, and use other things. Yeah. And generally speaking, that's what I would say. So I would try to stay as self-sufficient as possible with regards to bars and gels. The drink obviously is the Gatorade Endurance. That is a gold standard of fueling. And if you are taking a Morton gel from the course, that's fine. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's not a disaster zone, but you do want to make sure that you recognize the fact that each gel is quite low in sodium, so you're going to have to supplement your sodium. Okay. And this is an error. Make sure you are drinking on this course. You should pee at least once on the bike. But if you pee twice, that's good too. But pee at least once on the bike. And you want to be drinking sports drink. One warning or one thing I'll say, it's not so much a warning, is the fact that the humidity is going to be significantly lower than maybe a lot of athletes are accustomed to. The thing with a lack of humidity is it does make temperatures feel slightly cooler than people who come from humid conditions. But one thing that occurs oftentimes is that a nice reminder when you train and race in humidity is you just have this, like, you get thirsty, and you're just constantly reminded that you have sweat on you all the time, and you're just constantly reminded to drink. You don't have those kinds of subtle reminders in the dry conditions, and you just have to really focus on concentrating, making sure that you drink, because you're not going to have that sweat on you in the same way as you would in humid conditions. So I would maybe make sure you set an alarm on your Garmin, maybe every 5-6 minutes, to have it beep or ring or something like that, to just to remind yourself to take a drink, because you can kind of forget, and then you end up more dehydrated than you had intended to be, without even knowing it, and it just kind of sucks the life out of you from within. Okay, and that's particular to just the dry conditions that they have up there. All right, the mental fitness thing that I just wanted to hit. Yeah, this is my figure. I did this for a presentation that we did with IRONMAN Lake Placid. And I'll bring it over here today. So this is kind of like my scrambled Venn diagram mind. The blue circle, I'll explain. So the blue circle represents all of the things over which you have complete control. Okay. And this really, the discussion around this is around the idea of goals, targets, and outcomes. I think oftentimes that the word goal ends up with getting a bad rap, or is misunderstood. You may set a goal of, I want to come in the top 10% of my age group in this race, or the top half of my age group. And that is not necessarily really a goal. That's something that's a little more like an outcome. Or you may say, I want to go sub 5 or sub 5.5 at this race. And that is not really a goal, but that is more of a target. So I just want to have a quick discussion about the idea of goal and goals, I should say, and what they are and maybe what they're not. So if we think of things over which we have complete control, so the set of things over which we have complete control is everything that exists within the blue circle. Okay. Our goals are things that should exist within the blue circle. I'm sorry that I wrote them on the outside, but I didn't have room on the inside. So these little statements, everything that's in the red that's labeled as a goal, is something over which you have complete control. What they look like is, I will drink every 10 minutes. Okay, that's something over which you have complete control. If 10 minutes goes by and you choose not to drink, that is a choice you have made. Okay. Or I will hold back on my wattage when people ride by. So if you're leaving T1 and you're supposed to be riding 200 watts and somebody blows by you and it would require you, 280 watts to go with them, and you do, that's a choice that you have made. Okay. You have violated a goal. Okay. So you had the ability to control what you did with that ride. So that's the idea of goals. Goals are the kinds of things that you should be able to have complete and total control over. Okay. Targets are something different. Targets are things over which you have a fair amount of control, but not total control, okay? So a target, for example, is I wanna go sub 11, okay? Oh, not on this day, you won't make the cutoff, I'm sorry. I wanna go sub 6 hours at the race, okay? That's something over which if you set if 6 hours is reasonable for you, you've set a target that makes sense for you. Okay, now you may not have accounted for the idea of way too much wind on race day, or conditions that end up being significantly warmer than you thought. Okay, you took the control over the situation and setting a target that was reasonable for you, but the part of the target that is out of your control are the conditions. Okay. Another example of a target is I will try to hold 9-minute pace for the first half of the run. Okay. Again, that may be 9-minute pace may be a reasonable target for you to try to hit, but you may not have accounted for extreme heat that may be happening on race day that you didn't plan on. Okay, and maybe 9-minute pace needs to look more like 9:20 pace. Okay. And then lastly, we have our outcomes. And outcomes are the things that typically disguise themselves as goals. And those are the things that we always talk about as goals that really aren't, okay? I wanna qualify for, if you're in an Ironman, I wanna qualify for Kona. I wanna be top 5 in my age group, okay? Those are the things that you have very little control over, okay? Because, for example, I want to be top 5 in my age group. That means for you to be successful, say 150 other people in your age group have to be unsuccessful. Okay. So that's very dependent upon other people. And that's something that's more like an outcome. And outcomes aren't bad per se, targets aren't bad, but I want to make sure that we kind of frame our thinking in the proper directions when we talk about the word goals. Okay. All right, and then lastly, and I'll send this presentation out, or what I'll do is I'll put it on a website, a PDF it and put it on the website, and share it with everybody. But this QR code, unlike the one earlier, will actually work. And it will bring you to these special offers from nutrition partners that we have: 25% off of Gatorade Endurance, 15% off of Clean Athlete, 20% off of Juice Performer, 25% off of Moxie Life, which is an excellent magnesium supplement, and 25% off of Piggy Bar. So if you want to take your phone and kind of shine it on that QR code, it's funny how QR codes made a comeback with COVID, right? They were that technology that was just dead. And then with COVID, all the restaurants started putting their menus and these QR codes in the middle of the table, and they're back. So that's there for you to have. And what I will do is I'm just going to go to if you have questions, feel free to ask them. I'm going to unmute people in a second. And yeah, hold on. Let me just go back here. Oh boy. All right, I'm allowing people to unmute. That's what I'm doing. That's my solution to this. So if you have a question, please feel free to ask. But first, I'm going to go into the chat zone and just see if we have questions that I can hit there. Okay. Couple from Reen. Looks like I missed some people. Can we go to our bikes in T1 on the morning of the race? Yes, you'll be able to do that. Can we bring our helmets and shoes on race morning along with nutrition and fluids? Nutrition and fluids, yes. Helmet and shoes, probably. Okay. I almost definitely shoes, but you may just be prepared that you may need your helmet to check it. You probably won't, but you may need your helmet to drop your bike off. Sometimes that happens.
Your bag that we're taking.
Okay, another cutoff according to the athlete briefing, 10 minutes transition cutoff. Oh, I'd be out. Any idea of the age group order for the swim? So the age group order for the swim, there is no age group order. It will be purely self-seated. So probably start at, under 30 minutes. Those who can swim under 30 minutes, 30 to 35, 35 to 40, and so on. Let me see. What about the parasites and swimmer's itch? Anything to worry about? I cannot speak intelligently on that topic. I don't know. So race morning, only place to get shuttle straight to T1 is from Church of Latter-day Saints. Correct. And on that map, that's the number 5. All other shuttles will bring you to. You can go to those other places and they will bring you to the Church of Latter-day Saints. But the only way that you're going to get to T1 is at the Church of Latter-day Saints.
T1?
Yes, T1. Yep.
Yeah.
T1.
Church of Latter-day Saints is the age of T1.
And any recommendation on cassette for the race? Is 11:25 too aggressive for this course? I would probably recommend 11:25 is the absolute smallest I would go on this course. I would probably recommend having a 28. Yeah, I'd probably go with a 28 on this particular course.
What do you have? We've been riding.
What's the steepest grade?
The steepest grade is, I don't know the exact number on the steepest grade, but I wouldn't, the grades are not, they tend not to be significant. The steepest grade is probably going to occur when you first enter that Snow Canyon climb. They are not huge in terms of grade, but when you're no Sugarloaf in Florida, none of that crap. But when you're climbing for a while. Okay. All right. So I'm going to get out of here and I'm going to go to see if I can see some faces here. I don't want to do that. All right. Any other questions that people may have?
You mentioned already your pace should be about 30 seconds slower. Is that what you recommend, or is that what you expect? Could you go out running your typical pace?
So in the first 4 miles of that, so what I'm saying is that course is built to be slower in the first 4 miles. Okay. I would not recommend going out running your typical pace. If you are running about, say, 15 to 25 seconds per mile slower than your typical pace, you're probably pacing it correctly.
Okay, perfect.
If that makes sense.
It does. Thank you.
No problem. I'm just going to stop sharing for a second. Okay, yes. Now I can see some faces a little better. All right. Okay, so any other questions? Just remember, there's a lot of people on mute. So if you have a question, you may need to unmute yourself.
Tim,
Hi, Tim. Are our family and friends going to be able to track us on the Ironman app on this race?
I would absolutely expect so. Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. As long as it works. Sometimes that thing doesn't love to work wholly. But I've had pretty good success in the past few races tracking athletes. It's been working pretty well. It just may be because the World Championship event, there's going to be a lot of people watching. It may get a little bit of overload. But in theory, yes, they should be able to track.
Tim,
What
not
else?
a question, but I just wanted to, there was a question on the bike helmet, and I just want to say what the athlete guide says, that the athletes must place their helmets in their bike gear bag prior to checking in their bike gear bag.
Thank you. Be advised. So when you drop your bike gear bag off on Friday, be prepared to offer up your helmet and not see it again. Not that you should need it. You don't have a bike, so. Any other questions? No other questions. I will go back and just real quick, just very quickly, I'm going to put that QR code up again for people to take advantage of those nutrition offers that are there. So use your phone to get there. We also, as a guest here, Mr. George Washington, but Peter Hurley, the owner of American Bicycle Group, Quintana Roo, Lightspeed, Obed. Thank you for joining us. So yeah, if you have any other questions, let me know. We'll be putting this recording up on YouTube and offering it out. And I will put the presentation as a whole up onto a site that people can access.
Thanks very much, Tim.
Thank you. Have a great night, all.